Welcome back everyone to the next video in part 8. In the previous video we looked at the subselect and how to use that within a join. Now there's quite a lot to take in and we went through a few examples, so I thought I'd put together another short video for you to get your head around a few more examples of the subselect in action. Firstly, however, we're going to have a quick look at the question I left you all with at the end of the previous video. We're going to have a look at that one and I'll show you what I've got so you can compare with your coding. First things first, let's change our database at the top into the one we're going to use. So, first step was pretty straightforward. We had to bring in two columns from the stock item transaction table, and of course to calculate the total stock transaction quantity per item we needed to use the sum function with the group by function at the end of the select statement. Now we've done that quite a few times, so that should have been pretty straightforward for you. And of course we also had to filter all the stock transactions to make sure they were transacted in 2016 only, using the year function that we've seen before. So once you put it together, that little bit of code, we were then going to use it in another select statement. We're going to use it as a subselect, and we're then going to bring in the stock item name, the on-hand quantity, and put it all together with the stock item name, total stock transaction quantity for each item, and the on-hand quantity. We also need to make sure, along with that, that these are for stock edits carried out in 2016 only. So there's another aware clause to take into account. Right then, let's see what I've got, and you can compare it to your code. So here's our subselect in part 1 of the question. Basically all we needed to do was bring in the stock item ID, sum the quantity to give us a total there, and of course we're pulling from the stock item transactions table. Now we had our where clause where we restricted where the transaction occurred to in 2016, and of course we then grouped by stock item ID. Let's have a look at that, and there we go, stock item ID, and we got our transaction quantities in there. Pretty straightforward. And then of course we had to bring in stock item name, and that came from the stock items table, and the quantity on hand, which is from the stock item holdings table itself. Now we had to put in another where clause here, stock item edits carried out in 2016, so I put in the year last edited when is 2016 from the stock item holdings table. Let's have a look at that quickly, and that was last edited when, and we had to make sure that the year was 2016 there. So we had two where clauses, one in our subselect to make sure all the transactions were 2016, and one in the outer select where we made sure that our stock item holdings were only edited in 2016 as well. On top of that, everything was inner joined. It's pretty easy, so it only brought back the required results that we saw when we ran it. 227 rows. If you got the same, all good. And if your data looks like this, fantastic stuff. I've renamed one column there. You may have renamed different ones, but it was all up to you. So hopefully you got similar coding that I did there. If you did, fantastic. If not, then just go through it and check what I've done here and bring yourself up to speed with that. Okay, I've got a couple more examples that we can run through to really get these subselect into your heads. So we'll move straight on to the first one. With his end of year bonus in the balance, The finance manager is keen to chase up any customers who have not cleared their accounts and has asked you for the following information. So you need to provide this for each customer with a customer invoice transaction that is yet to be finalized. So we need to provide these columns here: total amount excluding tax, total tax amount, the total transaction amount, and the total balance outstanding. So we need to find out which table we're going to bring those to, and as I said, we need to provide this for each customer, so we need to bring in some customer information as well in order to bolt all these totals onto. So we need some sort of customer column, which will probably use the customer name from our sales customers table here. So what about the other information we need? Customer invoice transactions. So have we got a customer transaction, customer invoice? We've got a customer transactions here. So we're probably going to be using that table, where it is yet to be finalized. Well, we could use that table. We could use the invoices. We'll see how we go. We'll check out those tables and we'll build up the query from there. So again, if you want to give this a quick go yourself, have a look at the tables, see if you can find out where the information is held and have a crack at the query, then you're more than welcome to do so. If not, let's crack on with the answer from my point of view. Good old select star to get us going, and the first table should I say, we were going to bring in was sales customers. Now it depends if you want to build up your subquery first or build out the outer query first. It's purely up to you. So we need the customer name from there. We're going to pseudonymize that as well. Customer name. Now I know in the example here we built up the subquery first and then moved on to the outer select statement. In this one I'm just going to build that up from there. And we're probably going to inner join. Okay, start with select star from. Now we need to decide which table we're going to use. If we bring in the customer transactions that we've got here, don't go too far down, let's do a Control 3, let's check out the rows on that. So we've got total amount excluding tax, fantastic, tax amount, transaction amount, balance outstanding, yep, we're looking at the right table there, is finalized. There's a little filter that we need to take into account. So obviously this is a flag. One is that it has been finalized, 0 it's not finalized yet. In that case there's a balance outstanding. So we need to bring that in, we need to take that one into account. Each customer with a customer invoice transaction that is yet to be finalized. Now let's build up our query itself. Customer transaction, we'll call that as T. Now there's one more thing that we need to take into account, and it is that we're only looking for customer invoices. Now if you see here, we have a transaction type ID. We need to take that into account. You can see there's a few different types, 1, 3, etc. So what we need to do is inner join on our transaction IDs, transaction types in our application table. I'm going to call that one C actually, customer transactions, so C, transaction types as T, on transaction type ID equals C dot transaction type ID. Now of course it might be tricky if you didn't know the database that we needed to make sure we brought in just the customer invoices. And if we have a quick look at this table here, you can see that transaction type name, customer invoice, that's the one we want. So we need to make sure on our inner join that we filter it accordingly. We're going to use an inner join because we only want results that are joined on the customer invoice transaction type ID 1. So we're going to say, and the transaction type name equals, remember to put your open and close single quotes, copy that and put that in there. So don't worry if you missed that when you gave this query a go. If you did give it a go, this is just quite a sneaky one that was put in there, another thing to watch out for. Now at least you can see where that customer invoice piece here fits in to the query. Let's close off our subselect. That's all good. We're missing one thing as well, is yet to be finalized, so it hasn't been finalized. So let's have a look at our sales customer transaction table again. We're looking for the is finalized column, so we're going to put that in as a where clause. Equals 0. So we don't want ones that are finalized, we want the ones that are not. So let's have a quick look at that. And you can see it is finalized 0, and there's an outstanding balance on all of those. So fantastic. We're bringing everything from there, but we of course need to bring in just the totals. So what are we joining to our customers there? Probably the customer ID. So we need to bring in customer ID. So that's our joining criteria. Let's bring that in here. We're going to call A dot customer ID equals C dot customer ID. Fantastic stuff. So we've built up our subselect with the basic requirements there. We just need to now bring in the totals, all the 4 totals there, pretty straightforward. Bringing them in one at a time. But you might find it easier when you're typing is to simply, not transaction type, is to simply do it without the sum just yet, sum formula, find the column that you want, amount excluding tax, and then you can simply add in the sum bit with the brackets as, just like that. Let's do that again for the remaining 4 columns. Tax amount, transaction amount, and last but not least the balance outstanding. There we go, and we can just simply grab that bit of code there, copy and paste it down there, grab that bit of code there, Control C, Control V to paste, double click those, copy and paste again, and we've got all our totals. And of course we need to group by, not forgetting to do that. Group by the customer ID. So now we've built up all of our totals within our subselect. So all we need to do now is bring them in to our outer select there. Let's bring those columns in. Amount excluding tax, tax amount, list the other one and the transaction amount. And that's it, pretty much. A lot of work going in to the sub-select, building up the sums, making sure we've got all our filtering correct. And yeah, it was quite tricky. It could easily have missed this little one here to filter stuff by the transaction types, but don't worry too much. The main focus was, of course, to get these sums in the right place and to build your sub-select there. So if you got something along those lines, then it's all good. Did you remember to put the where is finalized equals to 0, and of course you need your group by. Let's run that off quickly. And here's the results. 39 rows. How did you guys do? Did you get 39 rows in this one? If you did, brilliant stuff. So a simple, straightforward sub-select with quite a few rows there, but a couple of cheeky things to take into consideration there. Some filters within the inner join and the where clause there. On to the next one then. So the finance team has asked the purchasing manager to collate some information together to ensure that the correct payments go out to suppliers this month. And surprise, surprise, she's come to you for the data. So based on this year's purchase orders, and that's we're in 2016, if you didn't know, she's after the following details. Total quantity of ordered outers per item, total quantity of received outers, it should be outers, apologies for the spelling error there, and the quantity of outstanding orders, and that's the ordered minus the received outers per item. And then at the end of it all, she wants to see the total price of all received outers per item. So once again, we have got a pretty straightforward sub-select. We need to obviously base everything off the item itself, and then in our sub-select bring in these values here. So if you want to give this one a try, give it a crack, you're more than welcome to. We've got a few mathematical equations to work out to achieve these two rows here. If you want to try and figure them out yourself, you're more than welcome to. If not, key thing to focus on is bringing in these two columns here in your sub-select and based on the item itself. So pause the video if you want to give it a try, and then we shall go through the question. Okay, so we need to pull first of all the item. So I'm going to grab that. You may have found it easier to work with the sub-select first, even to write it out in a separate area of the query window and then copy and paste it in later. I'm just going to start the outside part straight away and get going with it from there. So the item, where's the item name held? We know that's in the warehouse stock items. So let's bring that one in there. We're going to call it I for items. So let's have a look at that quickly. And as you can see, we have a stock item name. So let's pull that one up quickly. And is that all we need on the outside of the outer query? Yeah, looks like it, per item. So that's all we need to focus on there. And now we'll build our sub-select, bringing in our totals. And we're fine with an inner join. So let's start from, and now we need to find out which table we're going to use. So what are we looking for exactly? So the purchasing manager to collate some information together to ensure the correct payments go out to suppliers this month. Okay, so we're looking at purchase orders. So for 2016. Let's have a look at the purchasing schema. We've got purchase orders and we've got purchase order lines. Let's bring in the purchase orders first. Pseudonymize it as O and have a look at that one. Control 3. And we've got our order date, so we can filter for 2016. Have we got any quantities in there? Any pricing information? No, we don't. So what we need to do is bring in another table. So we can inner join. As we know from working previously with these tables, we can simply bring in purchase order lines. And we join on the purchase order ID. Easy money. So let's grab that there. Let's see it. We've got ordered outers, received outers, we've got prices here, so we've got all that sort of information to play around with. First of all, what are we going to join onto our stock items? Is there any item ID and purchase orders? No, nothing there. Let's look at the next table. And everything seems to be coming from the order lines table. So there's a stock item ID. Let's bring that one in first. So now we can join our subselect to our table on the outside on the query there. So what do we need next? We need total quantity of ordered outers, received outers, etc. So let's bring those two in first, shall we? We've got our ordered outers. And we've got our received outers. Now we want to total it up per item, so what we need to do is sum that up. And we're simply going to call it total ordered outers. Grab that sum there, grab that bit there, copy paste, and we've got total received outers. So we're going to leave it there based on this year's purchase orders, so we need a filter at the end. Order date equals 2016, and of course we need to put our year bit in there to make it a function. So that is pretty much it for our little subselect. We know we're filtering it there. We've brought in these two columns, and if that's all you've brought in at the moment, that's fine. We'll look at these two in a second. We need to pseudonymize that. Stock item ID equals i.stock item ID. Fantastic. So we can bring our total ordered outers. And then our total received outers from there. So if that's as far as you got, we've gotten something crucial there. I'll throw up an error. We need to do our group by. Well spotted, guys. And we can run that off and see what we end up with. There you have it. Pretty straightforward. To received outers, etc., etc. Now, to get these next two columns, we need to play around with the columns either that we're bringing in from our subselect, for example these two columns, or we need to actually do something within our subselect itself. So let's have a look at the total quantity of outstanding outers, and here's a hint for you: ordered minus received per item. And as we've got the ordered and we've got the received, we can simply use those two columns. We can pretty much say ordered outers, then just simply put a minus sign in there. Received items as, and we're going to call it total outstanding outers. Pretty straightforward and easy. We've got these total columns here. We can just use them to subtract one from the other, and that'll give us the third column that we're after there, the outstanding outers. Brilliant. So now the price of all received outers per item. Now we haven't brought in the price in our sub-select, so we can't use these columns up here that we're bringing out to the outer query. So we need to look at what other columns are within our purchase order lines. Now we've got our received outers, because they want to know the price of all received outers. Now here's a column with the expected unit price per outer, $5.50. So what we need to do then is multiply our received outers by the unit price per outer. So we need to do that within our sub-select, because that comes from purchase order lines. So once again, what we'll do is not put in our sum just yet, because we still need to sum our queries. What we'll simply do is put in our received outers multiplied by expected unit price per outer, and then we'll bring in our sum functionality next as, I'm just going to call it total price for now. That's total price. So now we can return a total price per item. So all we need to do is simply bring that in here. Total price. Let's have a look at the data. And there you go. Novelty chili chocolates, if that's your thing. 19 outers, 19 received, nothing outstanding, and quite a hefty price for those chocolates there. There must be huge boxes of chocolates. The next one, the shirt, you can see the total ordered is a lot more than the actual received, so we're still waiting for almost 2,000 outers in that, and there's the total price for what we've received. And that, everyone, 17 rows again, and that's pretty much it for that query there. Remember, the sub-select was pretty straightforward when focusing on these two rows here, but we then had to put in a couple of other mathematical formulas, pretty simple ones in both the outer portion of the select statement as well as within the sub-select itself. Don't forget your filter there for your date, and of course group by if you're using these aggregate functions. Fantastic stuff, pretty straightforward. Hopefully you've learned a bit more on the little formulas in there. I know we've used the multiply when looking at invoicing and orders, that sort of thing, multiplying quantity by the unit price. Very similar thing here with the received outers and the expected unit price per outer. Fantastic stuff. How did you all get on with that? Hopefully you got these two straight away without issue, and then maybe learned a little bit about these other bits and pieces thrown in here, these additional columns. Right then, that's just another few examples for you to get your head around on that one. We've just got one more question for you to look into. Nice little one to finish this video off and to give you a little bit more practice on these sub-selects. So then, the question is, the warehouse manager's in-laws have arrived from out of town and his wife has asked him to take some leave days so he can, of course, shepherd everyone around. However, seeing as all his staff are quite new, he doesn't want to leave them with too much workload on their hands. His aim then is to clear as many outstanding orders as he can, focusing first on the customers with the largest amount of outstanding orders. He's come to you for the following data. He's after the customer's name, the total quantity of items ordered, and the total quantity of items shipped per customer. And of course, items shipped is those that have been invoiced. And then lastly, he's after the total outstanding quantity, which is total ordered minus total shipped. So you just need to pull all these for orders placed in 2016, as everything from previous years has been fully fulfilled. So a few things to take into consideration here. You've obviously got your customer name as one of the main columns to bring in. That should be pretty easy. And of course, you've got your items that are ordered from your orders tables, and then you've got your items shipped from your invoicing tables. So it's quite a few tables that you may need to bring in and join within your sub-select here, totaling them all and bringing in the results. And of course, we've got a little mathematical equation in here, similar to one of the ones up above in a previous query there, which is your ordered minus your shipped. So let's see how you do with that one. Now it might be you'll have to really rack your brains to figure out how to show just the ones that are outstanding, because that's kind of like all that the warehouse manager wants to see. But if it's a bit too tricky to filter accordingly, don't worry about it too much. Just try and get these columns in there for 2016, and we'll see how you go in the next video. Alrighty then, until then everyone, I hope you all have a fantastic day.